everyone. So today we are going to go over solving systems of equations and inequalities. So we're gonna do them in two parts. So first we're gonna go over equations and then we'll go over inequalities. So for equations, it's pretty straightforward. The inequalities part has a little more detail to it, but I don't want to overwhelm you, so I went ahead and covered it. Okay, so for equations, we can have a couple of options for solutions. Our first option is that our equations only have one solution. So when we're solving system of equations, they give us two lines, and we're going to be graphing our line. And wherever they intersect, wherever they cross, that's where our solution is. So that's solving system of equations. So like I said, we're given two lines. And these two lines, wherever they cross, then we are going to have a solution. So this is when we have only one solution. Okay, so for no solution, when they give us two equations, two lines to graph, and we graph these lines, they're going to end up being parallel lines. So why no solution? Well, we know that parallel lines go on forever, and they never intersect, they never cross, so that's why they will never have a solution. So our last option is infinite solution. So this is where we're given two equations, and when we graph our line, we end up seeing that one line is going to completely cover the other one. So we're going to have the same line. So infinite solutions, that means on these lines, every single point is going to be on top of each other intersecting. So since these lines go on forever, they have an infinite number of solutions. Okay, so that's for equations. So let's go ahead and talk about inequalities. So like I said, it goes a little more into detail about how to solve system of equations for inequalities. So the first thing we have to look for are the signs that inequalities that we're given. If we have less than or greater than, we're going to draw our line with a dotted line. If it's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, it's going to be a solid line. And the way that I remember that is our equal to have a solid line in the bottom. So I know that when I graph my line, it's going to be a solid line. That's how I remember it. Okay, so the next thing we have to look for is the shading. So what do I mean by shading? Well, when we're dealing with inequalities that are greater than, and greater than or equal to, we're going to be shading above our line. So when we graph our line, we're going to shade right above it. For less than and less than or equal to, we're actually going to be shading below our line. Okay, so greater than, above, less than, below. So that's pretty easy to remember, right? Greater than, above, less than, lower, less than, below. Okay, so the trick is knowing where the above and where the below is, but we'll do an example so that we can see. So right here, we're given two inequalities. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph them like we would any other line. Okay, so first I'm going to start with this one. And I'm going to start with my y-intercept, which is -2. And I'm going to follow my slope, which is 3/1. So I'm going to start down here at -2. And I'm going to rise 3/1, rise 3/1. And now I'm going to connect my dots. And I have my line. So I made a solid line because if I look at my inequality, it has the equal to, so that means it's going to be solid. And let's go ahead and do the shading. So it's greater than, so go ahead and look at our shading. Which one do you think we're going to do? Greater than or equal to, we're going to be shading above. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I have my solid line, and lightly I'm gonna be shading above my line. So all of this above. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next one. So if I'm looking at my inequality, I see it's less than, and so I'm just gonna do a dotted line. So it's dotted and it's less than, so I'm gonna be shading below. So for this one, I'm gonna start with my y-intercept, which is -6, and following my slope, which is -1/1. So let's go ahead and start at -6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's right here. And rise one to the left one, rise one to the left one, rise one to the left one. So let me go ahead and connect my points. So feel free, oops. Okay, that should have been dotted, right? Okay, so let me just go ahead and make this line dotted. So feel free to pause the video if you have to slow down for your notes. Okay, so there's my dotted line, and I'm going to be shading below. So I'm gonna be shading all of this part below. Okay, so if I look at what I have, I see over here I have nothing shaded. Let me go ahead and zoom in for you just a little. Okay, so right here I see that I have nothing shaded. Over here I have green. Down here in this corner I have pink. But all in this section I have pink and green. So this tells me that this part is going to be my solution set. So let's go ahead and check on that. In order to check on it, I'm going to take a couple of points. So I'm going to go ahead and label my different regions. So this first one, that's usually your first region, and it goes counterclockwise. So this is your second, your third is over here, and your fourth is over here. Okay, so I'm gonna take test points. You can pick any points at all. We're gonna pick one from each region, making sure that we pick one from this solution set just so that we can be sure. So the first one I'm going to do is, we'll go 3, 1. So I'll pick this point at 3, 1. And then over here in my second region, I'm just gonna go for this one, -2, 1. Over here, I'm just gonna go over 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That seems good. So -4, -4. And in my fourth region, I'm gonna we'll do this one. We'll do an easy one. So 2, -1. Okay, so now that I have my points, I can take my points and I can check them. So what I'm going to do is, on another page, I'm going to test my points against my original equations. Okay. So I went ahead and wrote it out. So I have my original equations on the top, and I already wrote down all of my test points for all of my regions. So in my first one, my first test point in region 1, I'm going to go ahead and test my 0.31. Okay, so if I look at this one, I know that my x is the 3 and y is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute my x and y into my equation. So my y is 1, so I'm going to write 1 greater than or equal to 3 times my x point, which is 3, minus 2. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and simplify. 3 times 3 is 9 minus 2. 1 is greater than or equal to 9 minus 2 is 7. So then I ask myself, is 1 greater than or equal to 7? And that is a big fat no. Okay, so let's try the other one. So I'm going to substitute 1 less than negative in my parentheses. I'll put a 3 and make sure you put it inside the parentheses. You'll see later on why. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean this up. And negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9. So then, yes. Okay, yes. So then you ask yourself, is 1 less than negative 9? And that is a no. So I'm going to put an X. Okay, so you're going to do that with all of our test points here. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here for a little. Go ahead and write them down and test them, and we'll see what we find. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and were able to test your points. So what we found out is our first points we know weren't right. Our second test points, one was correct, but the other one was false. So if one of them's false, then all of it is false. So we found out in our region 3, both of these statements were true, which means this point is in our solution set, which correlates exactly with what we shaded. And of course, our last test points failed. So we know for sure that this is the correct shading that we did for the graph. So what we're going to do is we are going to put into practice what we did. Okay, so during the next couple of weeks, you all are going to be working on a project. And this project, Miss Orona said she loves doing it with her Algebra 2 class. And we're going to see how it goes virtually. So each of you will be receiving, or you'll be looking at a map. Okay, and this map, let me go ahead and zoom out a little. Okay, so this map, you're going to be making a quarantine zone. So it's like the zombie apocalypse, and you have to make your own quarantine zone where your zombies can't get to you and eat your brains. Okay, so this is how you're going to do it. So on Monday, you're going to start by doing the following. Okay, so pay close attention and make sure you write down your questions so you can ask me during class on Monday. So you're going to pick 3 major buildings or locations, and these are going to be like the corners of your quarantine zone, right? So it's going to be a triangle. So mine that I chose first is the canyon up in Trans Mountain because it's really close to my house. And then I picked the Border Patrol Museum. And then I picked the city police station, so the police station in the Northeast. So those were my 3 buildings, because let me tell you why, guys. So see this whole place? So this part is, there's not a lot going on, so I can see any zombies coming for miles, and I'm well aware whether I go hide or I get my armor ready. Okay, so up here, I don't think zombies have good coordination. So like if I'm hiking up in the mountain, and I don't think there's any zombie hikers, but if there is, like just one kung fu kick and down the mountain they go, you know? Okay, so the Border Patrol Museum. If you guys haven't gone there, you should really go. It's really cool. So they have a bunch of vehicles and cool little stuff around, so that'd be a nice place to go. Just if I needed anything for like supplies and stuff. And then last but not least, well, we all know why I picked the police station. First of all, because there's like a lot of weapons there, and I'm sure there's a vending machine somewhere. So let me go ahead and connect my dots. So the first one that I'm going to connect is my Oak Tree Canyon and the National Border Patrol Museum. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw a long line because we're learning about lines, and we're going to solve our own systems using zombies, just in case, you never know. Okay, so the second one that I'm going to do, I did that the wrong color. Anyway, so the second one I'm going to connect is my Border Patrol Museum with my city police station. Okay. And plus, like, there's cells in the police station, I'm sure. So that way, you know, I can lock zombies in there, or I don't know, lock myself in there just in case. Who knows? Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to connect my Oak Tree Canyon with my police station. And plus, they have like video surveillance, right? And like a lot of police cars. Okay. So this is my quarantine zone, right? Right in here is my quarantine zone. So, what we're going to do is we are going to find the equations of these lines first. That's the first thing we have to do. Because remember, when we have systems, we have equations of lines, which we graph. So this one we kind of graphed before we have our equation of the line. But that's okay because we're smart mathematicians and we're able to do this. So let me go ahead and show you what I did. So how I graphed these is I got my 3 main buildings, my vertices, and I made sure that I kind of cheated and made this one on my axis. And then what I did is I got a pencil and connected this one to my y-axis and up to my x-axis. And I did the same with my canyon, down to my x and over to my y. So why did I do this? Well, I know I'm gonna have to find the slope, and the slope is easier to find if the markers land right on each number, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So that's why I did those first. And then, let me show you what I did. And then what I did next is, once I had my main markers, I filled in the rest of my little hashes across the X and the Y axis. So I ended up with a graph. So from this graph, I'm able to find the equation of my lines. So remember, the first thing I did was mark my 3 buildings that were gonna be my vertices. Second thing I did was I graphed my lines. And the third thing I did was make my little markers. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So now I have an actual graph to work with. Okay, so for my first equation, I'm going to find my slope and my y-intercept. Okay, so my y-intercept, see, this is why I did my markers. Let me show you on this one. So when I drew my line, I made sure to make this line one of them. So that way I just say, I don't know, maybe like this is -1 and I'll make this one -2. And then this will be -3 and this one will be -4. Okay, so that's what I kind of did. I did the most important first and then I filled in the blanks. So my mark lands on -1 for my y-intercept. So I'm going to write -1 for my b. And for my slope, so remember your slope is your rise over run. So I'm going to go from this point over to this point because it lands right on -3, right on the dot. So I'm going to go, I'm going to rise 1. So I rise 1 and I run 1, 2, 3. So my slope is going to be 1/3. Okay, so if you see this line, then you ask yourself, is it positive or negative? Well, my slope is negative. Okay, so that's how you find the equation of your line. So you're going to do that with your other two lines. So for my second equation, I see that on my y-axis, it crosses at -4, so that was my b. My slope, I counted from this line because I made it cross right on the dot and I used this one. So I went up 1, 2, 3, 4 and then I ran 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why my slope is 4/4 and of course it's negative, so it ends up being -1. Okay, so I did the same thing for my last line. Fortunately, they cross in the same place. So my b was 4 and my slope was 1/2. So what we're going to do is go ahead and write this out. And I'm going to use the form y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. So y equals, my m is -1/3 x minus my 1. Okay, so I'm going to do the same with my second equation. Y equals -1x. Oh, well, I could just put x, right? Plus 4. And y equals 1/2 x plus 4. Okay, so now that I have my equations, do you remember when we were going over the shading of our inequalities? So let me bring it up real quick for you. Okay, so this part. So this is what we're gonna look at. So in my equations, I'm gonna turn these into inequalities. And I want to shade this part right in the middle. My quarantine zone, I want it to be shaded. I want that to be my solution. So I'm going to take each of my graphs, and I'm going to see how I can change this inequality to make the middle shaded. Okay, so looking at what I have, go ahead and look at your notes and tell me what you think I should put. Okay, so for my first equation, when I change this into any inequality, I'm gonna start y. So I'm looking at this one, and I want this part shaded. So on my line, I'm going to shade above my line. Okay, so above, I use my greater than for sure. And then I have to think about it because my quarantine zone, I want that to be a real blockade, right? I don't want it to be kind of fenced in. So I'm going to put an equal sign on it to make sure I have a solid line, a solid barrier. And then the rest stays the same. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with my second equation. And I'm going to start with my y. And you know what? Let me go ahead and fill in the rest of it so that way I just have to worry about the inequality. Okay, so looking at my line 2, I want this part of my line 2 to be shaded in, right? Because I'm trying to get all of this part shaded. So on my line, am I going to be shading above or below my line? And the answer is below. So I'm going to shade below my line. So that's going to be a less than. And for sure, same thing, I want it to have that solid barrier. Okay, so I'm going to put that equal sign under it so it can be a solid line. Okay, for the last one, I'm going to go ahead and write my y and the rest of my equation. And looking at my third line, I'm going to ask myself again, do I want to shade above or below my line? And if I answer my own question, what do you think it's going to be? So if you said below, you are exactly right. So I want below, and I still want that solid line, so I'm going to put an equal sign under it. Okay, so that is the first part of what you are going to do. And just to be sure that we did the right thing, we're just going to lightly shade what we have. So y is greater than in our first equation or equal to. So I'm going to shade lightly just above my line. Okay. So for my second one, I have y is less than or equal to. So my second equation, it's less than. So I'm going to be shading below very lightly, very lightly. Okay. And for my last one, I'm going to check it. Y is less than or equal to. So I find my third equation, and I'm going to shade below, right, less than. So as I shade below, I'm making sure that right in here, yep, we have some green, we have some red, and we have some blue. So we shaded correctly. So now we have our quarantine points. Okay, so I'm looking inside my quarantine and let me see what I have. So I have a movie theater. Ooh, that's gonna be nice. I also have a Walmart. And it looks like that's about it. So, oh, I have a Lowe's pretty close, so that's cool. Okay, so this is what you all are going to be doing on Monday and I think some of Tuesday. Okay, so again, if you have any questions about any of this at all, make sure you bring your questions to class on Monday and I'll answer those for you. I hope you're excited about this project. It's going to be so much fun. I'm excited to see what you all come up with. And I'll see you all Monday in class.